The Midnight Encounter, Jessica's Desperate Journey. The fluorescent lights of Metro General Hospital buzzed overhead like angry wasps as Jessica Martinez finally clocked out at 11:47 p.m. Her white nursing shoes squeaked against the polished floor, each step echoing through the nearly empty corridors. After 16 hours of back-to-back shifts, her body felt like it was moving on autopilot. Her scrubs clung to her tired frame, and her dark hair had long since escaped its ponytail framing. Her face in exhausted waves. Jessica's phone vibrated in her pocket. A text from Mrs. Chen, her elderly neighbor who watched Oliver when she worked late shifts. "Little one's fast asleep. Don't worry about picking him up tonight. He can stay here until morning." Relief washed over her, followed immediately by a pang of guilt. How many nights had she missed tucking her son into bed? How many bedtime stories had she traded for overtime pay? The subway platform was nearly deserted when she arrived. A few night shift workers like herself waited for the last train to Queens, their faces reflecting the same bone-deep tiredness she felt. The approaching train's headlight cut through the tunnel darkness, and Jessica stepped aboard, grateful to find an empty seat near the back. As the train lurched into motion, Jessica closed her eyes and let her mind wander to the stack of unpaid bills on her kitchen table. Rent was due in 3 days, and even with the overtime, she was still $200 short. Oliver needed new shoes for school, and his birthday was coming up next month. The weight of responsibility pressed down on her shoulders like a physical force. The train swayed rhythmically through the tunnels, and despite her best efforts to stay alert, Jessica felt her eyelids growing heavy. The day's stress melted away as exhaustion finally claimed her. Her head tilted to the right, and without realizing it, she found herself leaning against the shoulder of the man sitting beside her. Adrian Blackwood had boarded at Times Square after another late meeting with international investors. His custom-tailored charcoal suit was immaculate, his dark hair perfectly styled despite the late hour. At 32, he had built quantum innovations from a college dorm room idea into a multi-billion-dollar empire. His company's revolutionary medical technology had saved countless lives, but success had come at a price. Relationships were transactions, trust was a liability, and love was a weakness he couldn't afford. When he felt the gentle pressure against his shoulder, Adrian's first instinct was to shift away, but something stopped him. The woman beside him looked utterly exhausted, her face peaceful in sleep, despite the obvious stress lines around her eyes. A hospital ID badge hung from her scrubs, Jessica Martinez, RN. Her hands, even in sleep, bore the calluses of hard work. Adrian found himself studying her face, noting the determination etched in her features even as she rested. There was something about her quiet strength that struck him. He had spent his evening in boardrooms with powerful people who commanded attention and demanded respect, yet this sleeping stranger radiated a different kind of power, the power of resilience. Carefully, so as not to wake her, Adrian adjusted his position to make her more comfortable. He set aside his tablet, abandoning the quarterly reports that usually consumed his thoughts. For the first time in years, he simply sat still, allowing someone else to find comfort in his presence without expecting anything in return. The train car was mostly empty, except for a few other passengers who noticed the unusual scene. An elderly woman across the aisle smiled warmly at Adrian's gentle consideration. A college student looked up from his textbook, witnessing a moment of unexpected humanity in a city that often felt cold and disconnected. As the miles passed, Adrian found his thoughts drifting from corporate strategies to simpler questions. When was the last time someone had trusted him enough to be vulnerable in his presence? When had he last felt genuinely useful, not for his money or influence, but simply for being human? The woman's steady breathing against his shoulder created an odd sense of peace he hadn't experienced in his penthouse office or luxury cars. Jessica stirred slightly in her sleep, murmuring something about Oliver needing new shoes. Adrian's heart tightened at the unconscious worry in her voice. Even in sleep, she carried her burdens. He recognized that weight, the constant pressure of responsibility, though his came in different forms. The train began to slow as it approached the next station. Adrian realized he had no idea where she was going, but he hoped it wasn't his stop. This moment of unexpected connection felt too precious to end. In his world of calculated moves and strategic relationships, this simple act of human trust was revolutionary. Jessica's phone buzzed softly in her pocket. Probably another message about Oliver or a reminder about tomorrow's early shift. Adrian wondered about her story, the struggles that had carved those worry lines, the dreams she might have set aside, the strength that kept her going through what were clearly difficult times. As the train pulled into Roosevelt Island, Adrian made a decision that would have surprised his board of directors. He canceled his driver with a quick text and decided to ride to the end of the line, wherever this stranger needed to go. For once, his schedule could wait. Someone needed his shoulder, and that felt more important than any business deal. The city rushed past the windows in streaks of light and shadow, but inside the train car, time seemed suspended. Two strangers, brought together by exhaustion and circumstance, sharing a moment of pure human connection that neither would forget. Adrian had no way of knowing that this sleeping woman would become the catalyst for everything he thought he knew about love, purpose, and what truly mattered in life. The revelation. When worlds collide. Jessica's eyes fluttered open as the train began its final approach to Astoria Boulevard. Disorientation hit her first, followed by the horrifying realization that she had been sleeping against a complete stranger. She jerked upright, her face flushing crimson in the harsh fluorescent lighting. "Oh my goodness!" she gasped, pressing her hands to her cheeks. "I am so incredibly sorry. I don't know what happened. I never do things like this. I must have been more tired than I thought." Her words tumbled out in a rush of embarrassment and genuine mortification. Adrian turned to face her fully, his green eyes warm with understanding rather than irritation. "Please, don't apologize," he said, his voice carrying a slight accent she couldn't quite place. "You looked like you needed the rest more than I needed personal space." His tone was gentle, completely free of the judgment she had expected. Jessica blinked in surprise. In her 5 years living in New York, subway etiquette usually involved avoiding eye contact, much less physical contact with strangers. "That's incredibly kind of you to say, but I still feel terrible. I work at the hospital, and I know better than to invade someone's personal space like that." "Medical field?" Adrian asked, noticing her scrubs and the stethoscope around her neck. "That explains the exhaustion. My sister's a doctor in London. She used to fall asleep standing up after her residency shifts." Something about his easy manner helped Jessica relax slightly. "Pediatric nurse," she explained. "Double shift today because we're short-staffed." Again. She gathered her purse and the small bag containing Oliver's favorite snacks. "I should let you get back to your evening. I'm sure you have somewhere important to be." As the train screeched to a halt, Adrian stood and extended his hand. "Actually, this is my stop too." Jessica looked surprised but accepted his help getting to her feet. Her legs felt unsteady after sitting for so long, and his firm grip steadied her. They walked together toward the exit, their footsteps echoing in the nearly empty station. The late-night air was crisp with the promise of autumn, and Jessica pulled her cardigan tighter around her shoulders. "I don't usually take the subway this late," Adrian said conversationally. "My driver had a family emergency tonight, so I decided to experience public transportation like a normal person." He smiled wryly. "Though I'm discovering it's not quite the adventure I expected." Jessica laughed softly. "Trust me. The subway at midnight is usually much less pleasant than what you experienced tonight. You got the sanitized version." She paused at the station entrance, unsure of the protocol for ending this unusual encounter. "Well, thank you again for being so understanding. I hope the rest of your night goes well." Adrian hesitated, something in her manner making him reluctant to let this moment end. "Can I ask you something? And please feel free to tell me it's none of my business." Jessica nodded cautiously. "You mentioned being short-staffed at work. Is that why you're working such long hours?" The question caught her off guard with its genuine concern. "Partly," she admitted, "but mostly it's because I need the overtime pay. Single mom, you know how it is." She immediately regretted the admission, wondering why she was sharing personal details with a stranger. "How old is your child?" Adrian asked, gently. "5. His name's Oliver. He's staying with our neighbor tonight because I got off so late." Jessica's voice softened when she spoke about her son, and Adrian noticed the way her entire demeanor changed. "Oliver's a great name," he said. "Strong. Classic." He paused, then made a decision that surprised even him. "This might sound forward, but there's a 24-hour diner 2 blocks from here. Best coffee in Queens, according to the internet. Would you like to grab a cup? You look like you could use some caffeine before heading home." Jessica studied his face, searching for hidden motives or red flags. But his expression remained open, genuinely friendly, without being pushy. "I should probably get home and let Mrs. Chen get some sleep," she said, though part of her was tempted. When was the last time someone had offered her coffee just to be kind? "Of course," Adrian said immediately. "I understand completely." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card, hesitating briefly before handing it to her. "This might sound strange, but if you ever need anything, and I mean anything, please don't hesitate to call." Jessica took the card and glanced down at it under the streetlight. The elegant lettering made her breath catch. "Adrian Blackwood, Chief Executive Officer, Quantum Innovations." She looked up at him with wide eyes, recognition dawning. "Wait," she said slowly. "You're that Adrian Blackwood, the tech genius who developed the new heart monitoring system we use at the hospital, the one who's been in all the medical journals." Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. "You're worth like billions." Adrian's expression became carefully neutral. "The technology my company develops is important work," he said simply. "But right now, I'm just a guy who met an interesting woman on the subway." Jessica shook her head in disbelief. "But why would someone like you... why are you being so nice to me? People like you don't usually..." She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence without sounding presumptuous. "People like me?" Adrian repeated gently. "You mean successful people? Or do you mean people who have forgotten what it's like to work 16-hour days just to make ends meet?" His voice carried a note of sadness. "I haven't forgotten, Jessica. I just got lucky enough to build something that changed my circumstances." The use of her name startled her. She realized he must have read it from her hospital badge. But instead of feeling violated, she felt seen in a way that was both surprising and comforting. "I should go," she said softly, tucking his card into her purse. "Oliver will be up early and I have another shift tomorrow." "Of course," Adrian said. "But Jessica?" She turned back to him. "That offer for coffee stands. Any time. No strings attached. Just sometimes it's nice to have someone to talk to who understands what it's like to carry the weight of responsibility." As Jessica walked toward her apartment building, she found herself thinking about the strange encounter. In her experience, wealthy, powerful men didn't offer kindness without expecting something in return. But there had been something different about Adrian Blackwood, a genuine quality that made her want to trust him despite her better judgment. She climbed the 3 flights to her small apartment, her mind replaying their conversation. His business card felt warm in her pocket, like a small promise of possibility in a life that had offered precious few surprises lately. Little did Jessica know that this chance encounter with a sleeping stranger would become the first chapter of a love story that would challenge everything she believed about fate, worthiness, and whether fairy tales could exist in the real world. And for Adrian, meeting Jessica would force him to confront the emptiness in his perfectly constructed life and question whether success without love was really success at all.